Ross Gallery is located at the heart of the University of Pennsylvania's campus, inside the Fisher Fine Arts Library building. My name is Heather Moqtaderi. I am a curator for the Arthur Ross Gallery, and this is a virtual walkthrough of our Fall 2020 exhibition titled Re-materialize. Re-materialize is an exhibition that deeply considers the materiality of artworks, focusing on 4 contemporary artists who use repurposed materials within their practice: Anatsui, Shari Mendelson, Jackie Milad, and Alison Saar. These artists draw from the material histories of their artistic media to bridge the past with the present and inspire thinking about what materials can communicate about the places from which they were sourced and the conditions of living that they reflect. During this walkthrough, I will take you through the exhibition as if we were in person together, and I'll offer my thoughts on how these artworks relate to the themes of materiality, land and the environment, confronting the traumatic legacy of the past, and pathways for healing as we move into the future. Anatsui has commented that he intends multiple and flexible meanings in his sculptures that viewers can interpret in their own way. Sacred Moon, measuring 11 feet in length, is fabricated with thousands of tiny aluminum scraps, mostly from liquor bottle caps here, but the artist also uses discarded cassava graters and printing plates. Anatsui works with a team of studio assistants that work together to cut and hammer the scraps, assembling them into small patterned sections, which are then stitched together, all done with copper wire. The technique of stitched wire here connects to work by all of the artists in this exhibition, who use various techniques of collage, patching, and suturing of material, which we might consider as the aesthetic of mending or healing. The title Sacred Moon brings to mind ceremony and ritual practice, suggesting the interconnectedness of lunar cycles with agricultural and religious calendars. Those familiar with West African art may find visual connections with kente cloth, as well as the stamped Adinkra cloth of the Ashanti culture. The liquor bottle caps that Anatsui uses to create his sculptures tie in with the artist's rich conceptual vocabulary. He has stated that his work with liquor bottle caps in general references the intertwined histories of Africa and Europe. The bottle caps in works like Sacred Moon come from Nigerian bottle companies, but they reference the liquor originally brought to Africa by Europeans. Delta intersperses patches of purple and black liquor bottle caps at the edges of a shimmering silver plane, comprised of hammered, crimped, and folded printing plate fragments. Standing back from this piece, it appears to be a wall hanging of precious silver. As you look closely, you see the surface wear to the plate's coating that reveals the aluminum beneath, and in some places, bits of text from the content that was printed using the plate. paper bag is one element from a group of 7 large sculptures, all modeled after the sturdy, checkered nylon shopping bags that are a common sight at West African marketplaces. In 1980s Nigeria, these shopping bags became known as Ghana Must Go bags because of their association with Ghanaian refugees who used the bags to transport their belongings when they were forced to leave Nigeria. Over 1 million refugees were expelled, most of them Ghanaian, and the marketplace bags have become a symbol of exclusion and intolerance. Sculptures in the Wastepaper Bag series are made from discarded newspaper printing plates, many from obituary pages. These works invite us to draw connections between discarded materials and human lives. Jackie Milad is a multimedia artist based in Baltimore, Maryland. Earlier works by Milad in this exhibition, such as Warriors, are done on paper. In this piece, you can see the artist's interest in layering of imagery and media, with particular delight in the contrast of surfaces and dramatic interplay of black and gold. Throughout Milad's work, we often find imagery relating to her Egyptian cultural heritage. In Warriors, we find pyramid shapes along with line work that resembles chains, and in other places, armor. Katracha, too, combines Egyptian and Honduran iconography with the visual vocabulary of graffiti. On a foundation of pink-dyed canvas, a pair of eyes peer outward through a veil of gold fringe, surrounded by layer after layer of cultural motifs and snatches of phrase. A black snake form winds through a collage of Egyptian material culture. Stonework wall fragments, an Egyptian guardian's crook, a stylized papyrus leaf, pyramids turned on their heads, all intermixed with bright pink breast doodles and seemingly aimless line work. This breakdown of symbols and collapse of ideas references her experience in the world and allows us to draw multiple meanings from small details in each of her artworks. Openings in the Wall was created last year after Milad returned from a research trip to Egypt. In this work, like in many of her other pieces, Milad repurposes elements from earlier works. The drawings of faces come from an earlier series of 800 drawings that Milad exhibited and asked audience members to participate by mimicking the facial expressions. Milad's more recent works maintain a sense of audience participation by inviting, or perhaps even challenging, visitors to look deeply into these layers of drawings and collaged elements. These works have a sense of secrecy to them, seemingly suggesting that the artist may or may not reveal the meaning within her coded imagery if you look closely enough. Little buildings and little walls, Milad's aesthetic can often be characterized through the interplay of positive and negative. Through a richly layered collage, a face peers out at us. We find these haunting eye shapes throughout Milad's work, here alongside a passage of teardrop-like shapes. This piece is a companion to the collage below it, arches, and we find a common language of collaged portrait, shapes, and sumptuous material dialogue. Saar is a mixed media artist based in Los Angeles, California. Saar explores the role skin tone has played in racial stereotyping in these powerful works. High Yellow Blue references the term high yellow, which was coined during the time of slavery in the United States to describe light-skinned people of mixed African and European ancestry. In this image, Saar references the character of Eliza from Harriet Beecher Stowe's novel Uncle Tom's Cabin. Eliza, an enslaved woman, was light-skinned, and this work reflects the preferential treatment given to lighter-skinned people through printing on a delicate, lacy handkerchief. Saar printed indigo blue on an indigo-dyed sugar sack, and this image also relates to Uncle Tom's Cabin, referencing the character of Topsy, giving this darker-skinned character a new sense of agency and empowerment. Redbone blues refers to a term applied to people of mixed European, African, and Native American ancestry. As we move through other prints in this exhibition, we'll see how Alison Saar connects this history to the migration of Black people in the United States and the development of blues music. Breach is part of a series in which Alison Saar considers historical floods in the American South, focusing on the lives of Black people who experienced environmental precarity and discrimination during the relief effort following the Great Mississippi Flood of 1927. The woodcut is printed on a stained, vintage linen seed sack, reflective of the agricultural economy that was devastated by the 1927 flood, and the Black communities that made up 95% of the agricultural workforce. Breach confronts the viewer with the woodcut image of a nude female balancing an impossibly large heap of household goods atop her head, while punting a small wooden raft across a seemingly endless expanse of water. This woodcut print is an image taken from a life-size sculpture of the same name, with a standing female figure covered in rusted ceiling tin. This sculpture, Janus, is likewise covered in a patchwork skin of rusted ceiling tin. The Roman god Janus, with two faces, represents beginnings, endings, and passageways. In Saar's Janus, she presents one face with clearly articulated features, but the other face is obscured by a veil of nails, referencing the nailed bellies of Nkisi Kondi power figures used in the African Kondo. Nkisi figures are used to both cure or heal the body of illness, but also to cure or amend social ills or wrongdoing. Alison Saar's Janus suggests a need for healing and addressing the trauma of slavery's legacy in the United States. The next two images here by Alison Saar reference the migration of Southern Black communities displaced by the Great Flood of 1927 and the development of blues music and jazz. Backwater Blues references the famous blues song originally sung by Bessie Smith. Black Bottom Stomp references a popular 1920s dance and tune by Jelly Roll Morton, referencing the Detroit neighborhood known as Black Bottom, but it also connects to an area of Philadelphia, once known as Black Bottom, a predominantly Black neighborhood which was raised in the name of urban renewal and is now home to University City, where our gallery is situated. Paint blue references a blue-toned paint derived from indigo that was used by African American Gullah communities of the southeastern coastal United States. The color was intended to ward off ghosts or haints. Shari Mendelson is a sculptor based in Brooklyn, New York, who works with discarded plastic bottles to fabricate sculptures that evoke the preciousness of ancient glass artifacts. This walking animal sculpture is based on a fanciful glass flask from the Toledo Museum of Art that Mendelson studied when she held a residency at the museum's glass program. This Janus vessel is two-faced and was inspired by a study visit that Mendelson made to the Penn Museum right here at our university, where she viewed an ancient Roman Janus bottle. The bottle that she studied was tiny enough to be held in the palm of your hand, but you can see that she has played with the scale to create a much larger sculpture. Mendelson's sculptural forms are reflective of the materials that are available to her, which are plastic bottles from her own recycling and the recycling bins of friends and family. The shape of this reclining sphinx form derived its crouched stance from an almond milk bottle, and the feet from milk bottles, and the hair from the necks of Tropicana orange juice bottles. When studying historic museum objects, Mendelson often plays with scale. This tall 4-part vase with exoskeleton is based on a 4th century cosmetic tube from the Corning Museum of Glass that measured just about 5 inches. Mendelson held a residency at the Corning Museum where she encountered the tiny Roman glass cosmetic tube, which she then reimagined in plastic in monumental scale. It is interesting to note that Mendelson's formal artistic training concentrated in the art of goldsmithing, and I think you can see that goldsmith technique in the way she has constructed this work. This piece, The Offering, comes from Mendelssohn's frequent visits to the Metropolitan Museum of Art, where she encountered a small silver bull sculpture from the 3rd century BC in Iran. The silver vessel is very similar in form to Mendelssohn's interpretation, and it's interesting that the function of the ancient object is still uncertain, although it is believed to be connected with ritual or ceremonial function. Since Shari Mendelson studied goldsmithing, I love that this female figure with earrings demonstrates that jewelry-making practice. This piece reflects Mendelssohn's interest in studying the ancient past through objects that were buried, and how animal, deity, and vessel can all coexist in the same object. This Bactrian camel is the type of two-humped camel that lives in the area where the Silk Road once enabled trade between Central Asia and East Asia. This exhibition inspires thinking about how people lived in the past and the exchange of goods and images and forms, and this camel is a nice representation of that interest. We end here with Double Deer with Cup, which looks both backward and forward, like the Janus sculptures. Mendelssohn based this piece on a bronze Iranian sculpture from 6th century BC, and I think it's important to note that people in the ancient world were also concerned with looking backward and forward and thinking about regeneration, as the stag's antlers regenerate each year. Thank you for taking this tour with me, and I hope that I was able to capture some of the materiality and magic of Re-materialize in this virtual format.